It has been quite the week since I last recorded for you guys, so I think I'm going to skip on the updates and just talk about something a little bit more, I don't know, positive today. I wrote a while back, and if you're anything like me, I have a bad habit of writing full blog posts on Facebook and stuff like that, just ranting, kind of like I do here, just getting the full picture of whatever's on my mind that day, put down on, Facebook, Twitter, whatever I'm in the mood to use that day, getting it put down on paper. I wrote a while back a little ditty and basically stated that the street racers won't race anymore. The teenagers are all in by 9. Rebellion is dead. When I mean rebellion, obviously, speaking from a Christian perspective, the notion of rebellion, it's not necessarily a positive thing from a Christian point of view, and I agree. However, that's not the kind of rebellion I'm talking about. The kind of rebellion I'm talking about is the one that offers the flavor of life. The one that kind of created all the cultures that we love. That's the kind of rebellion I'm talking about. And sure, it comes with some of that negative aspect to it as well. But that's not what I'm looking to promote. I'm not looking to promote the negative side of it. I guess what I've seen happen over the years is that people have stopped trying to enjoy what gives them purpose. They have stopped trying to enjoy anything besides basically the internet. So you've got your to work, your from work, and whatever's online, be it Netflix, YouTube, your social media, your Instagram, and that's about it. I really do feel like technology, to a certain extent, has really kind of stomped out our ability to really and truly live. I have this really special place in my memories that is kept for the early 90s. I'm a late 80s kid. But the early 90s, I remember them. I remember Keds. I remember shin-high socks. I remember shorts that were probably a little too short. And I remember the little Lacoste logo on t-shirts. That's what I remember. I remember bright colors and people just being friendly and kind of making a big thing out of nothing. Stranger Things came back on this weekend, and I don't know about you, but that's probably hands down one of my favorite shows. And it's season 3, man. That's one of my favorite shows. It came back on, and we've got all these scenes of the malls and the places where people gather and the public pools and all that, and it's just like, wow, that's how people used to interact. Man, that's so cool. Music was actually a thing back then. If you were a punk or a skinhead or really into pop music, really into whatever was going on at the time, a metal guy back then, your style, your identity was really clearly shown for everyone to see. And it was really cool. But nowadays, and this might just be me getting older, and that's what I'm praying for. A lot of people have told me that the subcultures, the kids still get together, they still hang out, they still do all the things that I remember doing back when I was a rebellious teenager. I've been told that they still do those things. I haven't seen it. A good example is you try to line up somewhere in Mexico on the street with someone, and they don't know how to do this stuff anymore. They don't understand that you slow down to second gear, probably about 35, 40 miles an hour, give 3 honks, 1, 2, 3, and then go. They don't understand that. You get up next to them and they slow down, and then they take off, or if you honk, they back off, and it's just like they're super confused. Nobody knows how these arts, born of rebellion, in this case to the police, nobody knows how these arts are done anymore, and so they don't do them, and it's really disappointing. There's a lot of things in that I miss a lot. I came up, like I said, early 2000s, late 90s was really my jam, and yeah, I wasn't a great kid back then, so I know my fair amount about rebellion. I know about sneaking out at night. I know about, getting fireworks I'm not supposed to have. I know about throwing 3-inch mortars, fireworks, out into the park in the backyard, and yeah, I know about playing airsoft at 3 a.m. in the middle of Northwest Indiana in January. That's cold, man. But it's fun. Apparently, when you clip someone in the back of the ear with a good shot from a ways away, that stuff hurts under those conditions. So all these really fond memories I have of growing up back when we weren't really inclined to, we had our own way that we wanted to do things. And yeah, there's a lot of bad memories created during that time of the way, I treated my parents. Just wanting my space, just wanting the opportunity to experience things. And back then, what I saw was that the rules and the way they wanted me to do things were very limiting, right? They were completely just prohibiting me from expressing myself in any way. And expressing myself was, it was cars, it was airsoft, it was getting high at the time too. There was a lot of things back then that the rules were just an absolute burden to me back then. And so I quickly decided they didn't apply to me because I was better than the rules and I was better than the maker of the rules. To me, back then, the only maker of the rules were my folks and the staff and the various schools and other things I found myself attending. So I was smarter than they were. I was better than I was working with better equipment than they were, So those rules simply didn't apply to me, and that was just the way it was. Years later, I see the rules that people are now following. I don't know, I don't recognize them. Because I realized back then, if I had followed their rules to some extent, the right ones, which I can now see as an adult, if I would have followed those rules, they would have given me the room I needed to not feel bound up. Meaning I still could have gone out. I mean, truth be told, when I was 18, 19 years old, even living at my folks' house at the time, I pretty much completely ceased from having a curfew. I had no such thing. My mom was aware that I had a social life. I was a vocalist in bands once upon a time. And that was my life, Not coming home, not calling home, that wasn't a thing I had to deal with, because once I was and not even self-sufficient, obviously, because I was living with my folks, but once I was self-recognizant or responsible for my own behavior, because my mom wouldn't have bailed me out, I was basically just a roommate who she let live there free of charge because she loved me. That's the way it ended up being, and it was cool. And I'm not saying every parent needs to do that with their kids or with their grown children. I'm not saying that that's a requirement to be good. I'm just saying I was lucky enough to have a mom who understood me well enough by that time to allow that. So basically what ended up happening was, you follow these basic set of rules here in the house that make it possible to live with you so that I don't tear your freaking head off. There's that. And then beyond that, yeah, you do you. And it was a really beautiful thing. Now, this didn't come easy. When I was 15 years old, I was, what's the best way to put it? Adopted by the state for a 1.5 year period of time in order to figure out some of the radically problematic behavioral issues that I had. And that was something that my mom really didn't want to do, but I made made it impossible for her. And during that time, I learned, because she wasn't really the greatest at expressing it, but nobody is. During that time, I learned that there are boundaries, but where those boundaries don't apply, you're good. And I learned that. And I learned that there's actually a lot of fun to be had so long as you respect people and keep your living quarters reasonable. You know, simple things. You know, don't tell everybody to shut the fuck up. Don't tell people to fuck off every time they try to talk to you. Don't do things like that. And beyond that, hey, here's some life. Here's some beautiful stuff. Look, I'll even fund it. I'll even make it happen. Let's go have some experiences. And not every kid knows what that's like. A lot of kids learn respect when they're young and actually get to just live those experiences right away. And so they never grow up struggling with authority. But that wasn't so for me. For me, I grew up weird. So I look today and I say, wow, look at all this room that people have to live life. Look at all this free space we have where there aren't rules. And I'll clarify that in a minute. And look at how little of that freedom they use. And it really disappoints me. Today, folks are enjoying a lot of spaces in their lives where they could have more fun, but they choose not to. Meaning, there's no cop on the road. Let's drive in a silly way. Let's drive for fun. Or, better yet, you have bought a sports car. I think you should accept that there are going to be, you know, tickets and things like that that come from it, and just accept it as the price you pay. If I had to count the amount of speeding tickets I've had over the years, I couldn't do it. I've had a lot, you know. I've gotten better about making sure that I drive in a way that's respectful to people, but I've also learned to drive in a way that is very cautious about seeing police around the corners and stuff where they don't want to be seen. So I typically don't get caught nearly as much as I used to. It's not something that one should brag about. It's just experience. But what I refuse to do is I refuse to spend, you know, $500+ a month on a car payment and then drive like I have a $200 a month Toyota Yaris. I'm not going to do that. That being said, I could have some fun with the Yaris. I'm not going to lie. I remember back in, I think it was the early 2010s, 2010, 2011, maybe even 2007 or 8. But I remember seeing that Japan was making some really crazy time attacks out of those cars. So, hey man, the old saying, it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than to drive a fast car slow. It's true. And I've had some slow cars, and let me tell you, you can drive faster than everybody else so long as you know what you're doing. Or at least if you try. And that's what I don't get. That's what I don't get about it. I've learned to be respectful of reasonable laws. I've learned to be respectful of other people and the space that they need to live comfortably. What I don't get is why everybody's refusing to have fun. You know? Nobody's cutting up. Nobody's laughing anymore. Nobody talks to each other anymore. Nobody races. Nobody drives aggressively. It's all so very boring. It all feels very dead. And that's one of my greatest issues with this modern world that we're living in. It's just we've somehow managed to get everybody to follow the rules so well that there's no room for fun anymore. On top of which, let's be very clear here. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that, you know, there is space between the rules to have fun. Really, there's not. Really, there's not. And that all comes back to this conversation we've been having about the nature of government that we live under right now. You kind of have to take your space. You kind of have to be willing to pay the consequences, you know, for the fun you want to have. But I think what a lot of people are failing to do is realizing that that fun is worth it. You know, let's you and me, let's have a party. Let's do something crazy. let's put our house cat out on the front yard and let him lay there for a few hours. We'll be some crazy folks, dude. Let me tell you. Let's go to a state where marijuana is still illegal and buy a dime and smoke a bowl together. Oh my gosh. Let's do all these crazy things, you know? It's kind of like saying, let's play with blocks after dinner when we're told to put our toys away. Oh my goodness. You can't really have fun anymore or do anything in life unless you're willing to take the risk of getting in trouble, because they have put a rule in place for everything. And yeah, it's sad because so many people are just willing to go, okay. Not me. Because I remember what it was like to be 15 years old and to say, yeah, the rules don't apply to me. And I'll say that openly. There's a lot of rules that straight up don't apply to me. And here's the reason why. For a rule to be effective, you have to enforce it. Make yourself a hard or difficult enforcement target. Make yourself hard to lay the consequences down upon. You have to see the problem in order to enforce the problem. Don't let people see it. Or rather, don't let those with any power to hurt you see it. Have fun. And when I say have fun, I mean have fun while still loving people. You know, you can be really obnoxious in today's day and age, like I mean really obnoxious, and still demonstrate to people that you love them. I was talking in my last video about the family member that had passed, but what I didn't get a chance to tell you about then, because it was recorded on a Friday prior to that weekend, is that we had some family members get really ugly over my past family members' belongings. Very disrespectful towards my mom, which, as I'm learning, is a repeat issue she's had over the years with these particular family members. Really disrespectful towards my stepdad, who she was lucky enough to marry within the last 10 years here. And yeah, it didn't fly well. And then on top of which, they got into the deceased party's home and just kind of started grabbing instead of cleaning. By cleaning, I mean that this deceased family member was something of a pack rat, to put it rather mildly. So instead of cleaning and finding the important paperwork necessary to process the funeral and all that, they got into the home and started snatching and grabbing, being extremely disrespectful about it, and it caused a big commotion. Well, I had the lovely opportunity to speak with them 2 days after and kind of lit into them, you know, in a loving way as much as possible. Yesterday I talked to them again. I didn't light into them quite so much. I more kind of just had a heart-to-heart with them, but it wasn't polite. But the premise behind it is that you can speak your mind, you can be a dynamic communicator without being hateful. It is possible. You know, how do parents speak to their children and discipline their children? You know, we kind of live under this assumption every day that if you have something negative at all to say to someone, it means you're hateful. It's not the truth. And that kind of comes back to the societal break we've had with fun and with communication and with a lot of ways we do things. So to be clear in this video, I'm not advocating for you to start breaking all the rules. That's not necessarily right. You know, Romans 13 and Romans 12 is used a lot by statists and the like, and I will remind you, I am an anarcho-Christian. And there is some context to it. So we have to do things, again, with nuance. We have to take some nuance into every position we hold and not get too short up on one side or the other and not be too straight edge about the opinions we hold. But we have to respect authority to the extent that it deserves respect, but also give them a reason to do what they do in the first place. We have to refuse to lie down be still, and do things by these sketched in little lines, when what we really are people meant to live, create, enjoy memorable experiences, and get to know each other. Because if you follow the letter of the law, cultures and the governments, if you follow the letter of the law, you will do nothing. You will pay your taxes, you will go to work, you will drive to work, you'll drive home, you'll eat your dinner, you'll go to bed. You'll buy a home, you'll save up for a college fund, you'll have kids, you'll do all these different things, and through it all, you'll have lived by their exact procedures and really have nothing to show for it. Nothing worth having anyways. No memories, no experiences, nothing that was worth doing. It's a very boring existence, and I refuse to live it. That's why I recommend maintain a little rebelliousness. But again, with all things, utilize some nuance. Don't just go, yeah, I'm a rebel, so screw everything, and haul ass everywhere, get tickets unnecessarily, get into car wrecks, drink yourself stupid, go to orgies. That's not the sort of thing I'm talking about. Above all else, what makes it easy, really, and I talked about this before, recognize that they have rules, that they have laws. Recognize that those lawgivers and those rule makers are often flawed. But the easiest one to follow is follow God's laws. His are easy. His burden is light. And once you find yourself a transformed Christian, they're super easy, man. Again, take that with a grain of salt. It's not always easy, but it's easier than following the state's laws. Love other people. Love the Father, your God, with all your heart, and love people as yourself. If you can manage that, you're fine. The laws and the rules of the world, they're all right. They're all right. They'll do their thing, you do your thing. Try not to get in their way too much. That should leave you enough room for some life. Me personally, I'm doing everything I can to get some life back into my life. I'm trying really hard to go back out to car shows like I used to do when I was younger, interact with people more often. I met a YouTuber this weekend. Actually, I want to say Thursday Thursday evening, July 4th, 4th of July. I met a really cool YouTuber out at a Oklahoma car show. It was Ethan Vlogs, and he had some nice equipment and was doing a really good job talking to people and stuff. Got some tips from him, obviously. Really sharp guy, you know, sharp, younger guy, but sharp guy nonetheless. He had his stuff put together, and he seemed to understand, you know, that we have to get out there and we have to kind of enforce our will to live, our will to have experiences, even though it's not... How many times have you been to a car show only to have police roll up and break it up while nobody's doing anything wrong? How many times have you been out driving the roads, you know, doing nothing, and see someone get pulled over who was also doing nothing? Or maybe that person was you. What I'm getting at is that we have to live in spite of an oppressive government, in spite of oppressive rules. We have to. Because it's like they always say, there's that place in you, in your heart, in your mind, that belongs to you, that nobody can take. No amount of rules can break it from you. You'll never compromise it. You have to hold on to that. You have to make sure that that's yours and only yours, and that it's not up for debate and it's not up for challenge. Next, in order to really have fun in life, make that area as big as possible, as large as possible. Push out against the things that try to make that area smaller. You know, my area where I won't be compromised is on the road. It's where it starts. It's the outer edges. My area where I won't be compromised at its core is in Christ. That won't be compromised. That's where the torturer, that's the spot that the torturer, given a healthy constitution and a little bit of guts, which under those circumstances I would hope I'd have, but that's the area that the torturer can't get me to, confess against. I will never denounce Christ. And so far as the road is concerned, you'd have to work pretty hard to convince me not to drive the way I drive and not to enjoy my car the way I do and not to interact with people the way I do. It'd take a lot of work. It'd take a lot of enforcement. I don't think you got what it takes, statist. And Karen, you out there who just gets mad because what you're doing is against the law, I feel bad for you. You worship the law of the state and you worship that thin blue line like your own little god. And trust me, given the right reasons, they'll tase you too. Given the right reasons, they'll beat you to death too. Given the right reasons, they'll cite you too. They'll put you in bankruptcy. Just give them an excuse. It's what they do. You see, they're oppressive. Their bloodline, the air they breathe, is punishment, pure and simple. They don't have any room for life. They're not interested in your life. They don't care that you've got 15 years of worthless time and you're trying to fix it. They don't care. You see, to them, you're revenue, you're cattle. You're going to stand in this spot and eat that grass because your life is meant to be meaningless. And I'm telling you differently. Live your life. Be willing to take a few risks. Because in this day and age, that's what you have to do. You have to take risks in dealing with the law in order to live at all. This is just my 2 cents on it. Guys, don't give up. Don't conform. Don't behave the way everyone else does just because they feel like you should. Stand out, stand up, do things that are meaningful to you. Create friendships, create relationships, be good to people, love them, have fun doing it. But whatever you do, don't conform. Because once you conform, you put yourself at risk of conforming totally, of giving up that spot in your heart that no one should be able to touch. In fact, I'd say it's fair to say, the more comfortable you are with conforming to rules and guidelines set by people who don't care about you, the more of that piece of yourself you erode every day. It's kind of like lying. They say, never lie, because when you lie, you tell yourself that you're the type of person who will lie. So when you speak the truth, it lacks authority because you're second guessing yourself before the words ever come out of your mouth. In the same way, don't erode your core. Don't erode do not erode the things that make you you for the state, because it takes away from the strength you have when doing things that are well within your right to do. Guys, I love you all. I hope you have a great week. It's been a bit of a bumpy ride, but I think we're all going to make it. This is Chuck, signing out. Take care, guys.